Hey guys, what's cracking? Godsman here, coming at you for the third time with a Revenger deck profile. Now, this time, this deck profile has finally gained some rapport, because guess who made top 8 with his buddies in Springfest? That's right. And Raging Form and friends have decided to make a few adjustments in between now and the last deck profile. So, without any further ado, I hope you enjoy. Alright, so beginning with the grade 3s, we have the one, the only, 4 copies of my avatar, Revenger, Raging Form Dragon. Literally the best card in the deck. Me personally, best Vanguard in, well, Vanguard. He has a couple skills and they both really work synergistically with each other. So his main skill is at the end of the battle in which he attacks. Doesn't have any restrictions on grade 3 or greater Vanguards. It doesn't even have to attack a Vanguard. Just whenever he's done attacking, you retire 3 Revengers and then you ride any grade 3 Revenger in your hand as stand. They keep the drives, you get the marker, they get to attack, it's all good days. But if you happen to ride into the Raging Form and you got 4 or more cards in the damage zone, then you get to Limit Break. And what that entails is you counterblast 1. And by counterblasting 1, you're able to Superior Call a grade 2 or less Revenger from the deck. So yeah, what does that mean? Well, when you have 5 Revengers and you sack 3 to ride another Raging Form, you're down to 2. But by getting a third from the deck, you're able to use Raging Form's main skill again. So that makes for a triple attacking Vanguard, Tetra Drive, Eat Your Heart Out. This is better. And oh my god.
Bullshit.
Yeah, you would, Fourth Fall. By the way, my buddies are here, so it's all good taste. By the way, this deck, I'll tell you my record later, did really well, but these guys really helped. So anyway, yeah, really, Raging Form, you have to have it at 4. It's the main Vanguard of the deck. It literally is the glue that keeps everything together. You can ride it early, you can rush early, you can have it be your late game push, but the fact that it rides into anything else essentially means that your other deck strategies can be online within any given battle phase. So yeah, he's amazing. What's maybe not quite as amazing, but still pretty freaking cool is Raging Reverse. So yeah, Raging Fall Dragon Reverse at 2 copies. Now, when this was first revealed, people thought this was doo-doo water, but I think the community has lightened up after a while. So what does he do? First off is his axe skill, which is you can lock a Revenger in order to give 5k to 3 of your Revengers, and that can include himself. No, this axe is not once per turn. You could literally lock 2, 3, 5 Revengers, as many as you want. And that works pretty well because you've got a second skill, which is that this ability's cost is reduced by Counterblast 1 for each of your locked cards. Ooh, spicy. At the end of the battle that it attacks, so very much like Raging Form, you Counterblast 3 and discard 3, choose up to 2 of your rear guards that are stand, lock them. Then, if you have 2 or more locked cards or 5 cards in your damage zone, stand this unit. Yeah, wow, that's a lot to take in. So essentially what this means is he is a restanding Vanguard, but there's a couple timings in which this is really useful. The first one is that if you have him as a Vanguard, you could literally lock 2 or 3 like Revenger rear guards, buff presumably your front row, but really just any 3 units, and then when he's done attacking, you're able to do a Dauntless effect by pitching 3 and restanding him. If you lock 2, which is the bare minimum, then you're able to have the restand but with a Counterblast discard 3. If you lock 3 or more though, you don't even need to pay Counterblast. But there's another timing for this, right? The other timing is after you're done going into your Raging Forms, you can go into Fall and then trigger his restand there. Now this is more costly because you don't have any locked cards present at the time of activation, so you will be CBing 3 and discarding 3. But, and this is crucial, that's why he has a couple stipulations for his restand. If you have 2 stand units, you can lock them to get his restand, but if you're at Ultimate Break, because I don't know, you're playing Revengers, you want damage, then you can stand him regardless of locking. And this makes for a potential 4 Vanguard attack turn. You're not going to do it very often, but it's a good extender. I suggest making it more of an attack extender in the late game than as an early game because, I'll be real, discarding 3 is not good for gaining advantage. It doesn't feel very good, boys. But whether or not you use him as your first ride or as your final ride, yeah, he's pretty good. The same thing could be said for our next grade 3, which is 2 copies of Illusionary Revenger Mordred Phantom. So, yeah, the spice is real. We've got 2 Mordred, and he really never left us, did he? So Mordred basic skills, you call a number of Blaster Darks and you get a force marker for each of them, and then you can CB1 when this dude attacks to like stand up your Blaster Darks in the front row. Yeah, so marker spam and front row restands, that's the peak of V right there, to be honest. It doesn't get better, boys. So why we want Mordred? Well, really, because he's such a good offensive like pusher. So at first, I really used him as a finisher, and as a finisher, he was incredible, right? Because you can get 5 attack, you got all force markers going for it. But then I realized something. If you ride him first, you can literally just dump out your Blaster Darks and get a bunch of force markers, then go into your raging form and get 7 attacks while you have like an absurd number of force markers coming in, and the opponent generally dies to it. So yeah, whether you go with him first or go with him last, like Mordred is really solid. I like him a bit better than Raging Fall, but the only thing is that Mordred is very piece reliant. You specifically need things like Blaster Darks to keep it going. And with that, we're gonna move on to the grade 2s. Alright, moving on to grade 2. So, surprise, surprise, since we're running Mordred, we're running 4 Blaster Dark. Yeah, okay, not really much to say here. Blaster Dark, he has a Vanguard skill to pitch and get a drive. He can also CB1 to retire a unit. You're not going to be using these skills very much. Retiring an opponent's unit is actually surprisingly useful, so you can pester him with it sometimes, especially if you're playing against Peace Reliant decks, but other than that, he's just there for the force markers. So, next up, I really am surprised that I'm doing this, but I've cut Tartu down to 3. Yeah, so basically, you call her from hand. She's a clan collection unit, so I'm going to explain her a bit. Yeah, when you call her from hand specifically, so no Raging Form shenanigans, you Soul Blast 1, and then you call a grade 1 or less Revenger from the deck to the rear circle. However, that thing has to retire in a turn, so generally speaking, that doesn't matter, because you'll sack with Raging Form, or as an interesting interaction, if you lock them with Fall, then they're treated as new units, so they don't have to retire at the end of the turn anymore. But yeah, this is just like a simple, easy +1. But we're making room for the grade 2, so she's only at 3, but she still comes up plenty at 3. I think this is still just fine. I see her all the time. So, to Rukea. I used to run him at 4 for his ride skill, then I realized it's not that great. So why do we run him? First skill is when you ride over him, you look at the top 3 cards of the deck, you add a Revenger whose grade is equal to or less than the grade of your opponent's Vanguard at the time. Yeah, look, okay, you got a lot of Revengers in here. I made sure to play a lot of Revengers, but there's still a chance that can whiff. So you don't necessarily need to ride over this guy, but he is one of your more definitive +1s, whereas things like Tartu and Blaster Dark are like break-evens as grade 2 ride targets. So yeah, he's cool. He does get 5k though, as long as you've got a grade 1 behind him, so that makes for really nice columns, because then 15 plus 8 is 23, so you really get to pester your opponent, and that's really the name of the game, right? You know, pester them as much as possible. And the more they're annoyed, the better the job you're doing. But an arguably a better ride than Rukea is going to be 2 copies of Nullity Revenger Masquerade. I mean, come on, we got Blaster Dark, we got Mordred, we can't go without Nullity. So yeah, simple skills, don't really need to explain, it's just the Mordred or Blaster Dark Searcher. If you ride him as a van, you have nothing else in the field, then it is a +1 because you don't have any rear guards to retire. One thing that's potentially even more noteworthy though is his +3k. This makes him really ideal because, get this guys, if you're like calling some units off of Raging Form, and you're thinking, okay, what do I want to call? This dude is 13 as a standalone unit. So even though you can only call grade 2 or less, he's still a good attacker. He can still like hit the opponent's Vanguard. So when you're just really trying to push for game, or you're really just trying to like poke for damage, he's your best friend. He really is. And also, he makes really nice numbers because whether he's a grade 2 Vanguard or he's being boosted by like an 11k booster, he's able to hit over power thresholds, and so that makes him just fan-freaking-tastic. I love this guy's at 2. I used to run him at 3, but 2 is fine. So, now, an old friend makes a return. We've got 1 singular copy of Dorint. So, if you guys were insane and watched my nearly 2-hour-long Revenger deck profile last time, you'll notice that I cut Dorint and maybe trash talked him a little bit. I've lined up, so yeah, look, he CB1s and Soul Blast 1 in order to get 10k, then if you got Claudus, he draws. That power boost, really nice. Boosted by an 8k Rinnal, makes it a 28 column with an on hit. That means they have to guard with 20 if they want to guard it. That's really good. The draw, really though, he's here as a draw engine because I found I wasn't having enough cards to defend with physically and also have pieces for next turn comebacks. So he just gets you those draws. Yeah, sure, it's a Soul Blast and it's a Counter Blast, but if you play correctly, ideally you have just enough to use like all your Counter Blasts and still be in the game and finish it off. So yeah, we're just gonna run him as one because you realistically just search him off of Raging Form's Limit Break. So at the time Claudus is there, he gets his full effect. So not only is he a good attacker, but he's getting you advantage in the middle of your Raging Form turns. Okay, so grade ones, we're gonna start with the new grade one we got from the latest clan collection, which is Self-Control Revenger Rakia. So, if you ask me, he's a fair bit better than his brother Rukea, which is why he's at 4, whereas Rukea is at 2. What does he do? So, specifically, an effect from the soul, when you ride a grade 3 Revenger over a grade 2, so very specific timing, you only get one instance of this, then you're able to take any grade 1 Revenger of your choice and superior call it to the field as rest from the deck. That's really good. There's a lot of targets for this. As we go on later, a lot of your grade ones are valid targets. And one good target to do with this is go for another copy of himself, and that's for his rare effect, which is an act on rare. You Soul Blast 2, and you choose a grade 2 Revenger, so specific, a grade 2 Revenger, not less or more, grade 2. From the drop, you call him to rear in the same column as him. So yeah, targets that you would expect are going to, of course, be Rukea, because it gets the 5k anyway, even if he's at rest, so now Rukea is like hitting over grade 3 Vanguard thresholds. But then there's surprising stuff, right? You can actually go for Nullity Revenger as a means of spamming his on-place effect again, because it doesn't specify once per turn or where you place him. He can still peep 7 how many times you get him. So that's one idea. Another cool idea is if you've got a Claudus, but you don't have a Dorint because you've already used it up, you can revive Dorint. You don't have to use his effect, but just having a Dorint on the field is enough. So that's another reason why running him at 1 copy is a safe bet, because you can just revive him from the drop zone. So yeah, it's good days with him. You just kind of have to run him at 4 because he's a +1 with both of his effects. And moving on to probably the next best +1 and next best grade 1 in general, and also probably a contestant for the most annoying grade 1 in Vanguard. We've got 4 copies of Better Corvette, Rinnal. So
test that.
Yeah, of course he does. But dude, Corvette doesn't hit as much. So anyway, Rinnal, what does he do? So basically, when the attack he boosted, or just his attack in general, hits, then you peep top 3, you add any Revenger, so eat your heart out, Rukea, you're better, and you add it to your hand. The other 2 gets bot decked, that's important. Don't shuffle, you will be called out for that. And yeah, so this is mana rare effect as well. You can also Soul Blast when he's retired by your card ability in order to have your opponent choose one of their rear guards retired. So classic Howl Owl fashion, make them retire one of their rear guards. So yeah, he's really, really good as an advantage generator. I noticed though that the more I play him, the more I realize that don't rely on him for your advantage. That's why I run things like Claudus and Dorint to get more advantage regardless, because if you rely on him for your advantage, then you kind of give your opponent a clear line of defense to try and minimize your resources. Just use him for pressure. Really just annoy the opponent. One thing to note, this used to be our greatest grade 1 ride target before Rakia, but you don't want to ride him. You want him as a back row booster, because that way you get to make use of his effects every single turn, rather than just get a one-off and then ride over him. So that's really how you want to use Rinnal. Really, if you ask me, he's probably the best grade 1 in the deck, holistically all around, but Rakia is also really good. Okay, so regrettably, next up, we've got 2 copies of a non-Revenger, which is Cherishing Knight Branwen. So I try to maximize my Revenger name numbers, but I just ran into situations where I wasn't seeing my Raging Forms or my other grade 3s enough. This helps with that. And also, it's plus 5k bonus when you have 3 or more grade 1s. Seriously, do you play the deck? Yes, then you get this bonus. It's that simple. It's Shadow Paladins. You kill your grade 1s all the time. So yeah, really it's just a grade 3 searcher. There's not much else to explain. One thing I will say is a cool mini interaction is if you really are annoyed by the fact you have a non-Revenger on the field, you want to get rid of this productively rather than call over it. You can retire it as a part of Nullity Revenger's effect. So that way, Wooch, okay, that's online, like, and you got rid of a non-important piece in the process. So yeah, 2 Branwen is just enough. Another thing that's just enough at 2 is Transient Revenger Masquerade. So yeah, it's another part of the whole Mordred engine, quote unquote. You CB1 and suck him up in the soul to call a Blaster Dark from the drop zone. This is good for getting back your Blaster Darks if you don't have enough. This is good for continuing to spam over Blaster Darks, because you really just call him over Blaster Dark and then bring it back, get another force marker, and the plus 5k is actually kind of useful that way. And second skill, when it boosts, you get plus 3k. It only matters if he's boosting something that has like 13k. That's it. Otherwise, it doesn't make relevant numbers. He's not a very relevant booster. So you're either boosting grade 2 Masquerade or you're boosting like a rearguard grade 3. After that, we've got our final grade 1 of the deck, which is 1 copy of Claudus. You saw his brother Dorint, you knew there had to be a Claudus. Why is that a 1 copy? Well, really because you only need to like activate the effect once. It gives you a soul and CBs in order to let you draw. But if you've got his brother Dorint out, then it's able to countercharge it back. So it's just like suck up to draw. And you know, that's really good enough. You know, you're already superior calling all the freaking time. So this is a way around Tartu's end phase restriction. But my main favorite application with Claudus is this is a fan-freaking-tastic search target off of Rakia. Because you literally just call this thing as rests, Dorint sees that, he gets a draw on a 10k, and then on top of that, at end of turn, this thing can like suck up. So even though he didn't get to boost or attack this turn, you still got buff ups that make up for it, and you still got card advantage off of it. So it's ideal. And with that, we're gonna be moving on to the grade 0s. Okay, so for grade 0s, we're gonna be starting off with 4 draw PG. No explanation here. If you're running crit sentinels, you're just doing something wild and out there. Yeah, that's 4 draw PG. Next up after that though, what we'll need a little bit more explaining is that I'm continuing to run a 6-6 split on my crits and draws. So here's 2 Howl Owl followed by 4 Grim Revenger and 2 Death Feather Eagle. So how important is this split? Well, really it's up to you. The main importance is you have to run 4 Grim Revenger because it's got the Revenger name, and yes, that will come up. It actually saved me one of my rounds against a Tachi guy of all things. So yeah, you gotta run this no matter what. But I run a couple extra draw triggers because it's really good fodder. It gets you extra cards. I mean, you're retiring a bunch already, so hitting those draws is really nice to give you more advantage in the game. And if you're really, really, really desperate, you can just call this out as a booster. And so yeah, just a couple though. You still want to threaten with Raging Form because at the end of the day, one of the weaknesses of Raging Form is that it doesn't have a crit anywhere on its own. You kind of need to hit crit triggers to deal critical damage. So I still run 6 for that reason. Another thing that may or may not need explaining is my heal trigger lineup. So we're going to be running 2 copies of the normal heal trigger along with 2 copies of the heal guardian. Greed is good, very good in my opinion. I like to be greedy, so I want the best of both worlds. This is 20k shield, it's very relevant numbers. I mean, hell, if they're swinging things like Volca Goats at you, which, you know, surprisingly I wanted Beside to be at the event, I expected it, it wasn't there at all. This would have been really useful. Furthermore, this is really useful in the early game. The only reason I'm running 2 though is because you are a limit break deck essentially, so unless they want to effing kill you before you even hit grade 3, this isn't all that relevant. It's just there as like a safety buffer. It's another reason why we run 2 copies of the Grade 3 Searcher, because if you know you're playing against something aggressive, Valkyrian, then you can just search this off top 5 and keep it as like, you know, just a backup, right? And yeah, finally, we're going to be running 1 copy of the starter. Funnily enough, this is correct because you never know when this will go from like fielder drop back into the deck, and so it's a Revenger name. You never know. So even for that super slim possibility, it is objectively the correct starter choice. And yeah, that's gonna be the deck. So what do I think about this? Well, the fact that I basically never lost, I mean, I only lost once, and then I just like pegged that guy back in the top 8 in true revenge style, right? This deck is pretty phenomenal. Raging Form is just so aggressive with its 7 attack turns, and you can combo it out with things like Mordred and Raging Fall to just continue making 7 attacks in other ways that you smash them really hard. And really, the more aggressive you play this, the better. Just don't be stupid. Like, understand your resources, because if you don't, then unfortunately you're just going to whiff. You're going to run out of either rear guards or run out of shields, and then it's sad days, right? And yeah, I don't think I really got any more explaining other than my boys, the teams, you know, they worked really hard on this too. You know, this was a really, really long work in progress. So shout out to Assault Rider and, you know, my buddies Fourth Wall and Gear Shit for helping me play test this a lot. This was a real work in progress. It took a long time to come to this deck list, but I think I found the best of all worlds here. Oh, and please, for the love of God, play Force 1. There is no Force 2. Every time I played Force 2, I lost. Don't be like me. With that, take care, and God bless.